The following message is from King's Church 1066, based in Hastings, Bexhill and the surrounding area. For more information, head to our website, kings1066.org.
Hello everyone, my name is Nat. It's great to be here this morning. I'm really looking forward to it. I've just felt like during the worship, just so much of what's come through and what the Holy Spirit has been speaking to us about is in line with what I want to share this morning, just about us turning our face to Jesus, but also him turning his face towards us. But before I get into it, I just have a message from a guy called Tim Robertson, who you may remember came and preached here. I don't know if it was a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. And he's from an organisation called Compassion. And I wonder, if you can put the slides up. So many of us signed up to sponsor children in Ghana, connected with Michael Akotia, who's part of the Christ Central apostolic team that we've just been hearing about, Christ Central. And Michael just wanted to say a massive thank you. If you can just roll through these, Jacob, this is the support we are giving as a church. I mean, it's pretty incredible statistics. That's just Hastings venue. It's not even us as a whole church. If you want to go to the next one, this is kind of the amount of money, but additional gifts as well. And the next one, Jacob, these are the kids that we are sponsoring. They're getting education, vaccinations, food. Their lives are basically being transformed as they're being lifted up out of poverty, and they will go on to lift others out of poverty too. So Tim just wanted to say a massive thank you to those of you who are sponsoring children. So if you've got a Bible with you, in a moment we are going to get to Luke chapter 18. So I'm just letting you know that. We're not going to get there for a few minutes, but we will be getting there. Last week, Paul Edworthy spoke on how do we come to God, how to come to God. And this morning I'm going to speak on who can come to God. Now, for any of you who've been around for a while, I'm pretty sure you're going to say, in fact, someone said this in the prayer meeting this morning, well, we could answer that in about 2 seconds. In fact, I think they said 12, but I reckon if you say the word anyone, that takes about 2 seconds, doesn't it? And so we might think, well, why do we need to explore that? Because surely we know anyone can come to God. But I wonder if you've ever felt like you don't fit in. If I'm honest with you, I have felt like that my whole time in church life and in lots of other settings too. I think that's just something about me where I'm just predisposed to feel like I don't fit in anywhere I go. I always feel like I'm a bit too much over here or I'm not enough over here. And so this morning we're going to be looking at not just who can come to God, but who can belong in church. Who can belong in the family of God? Who can belong? Who does Jesus want? Who's Jesus after? And like I say, I'm sure we all know the right answer, that the answer is anyone. But if we delve a little bit deeper, even just into our own hearts and our own minds, we might find that we're not as keen on Jesus welcoming everyone as we perhaps should be. I don't know about you, but if I'm honest with you, there are some people I know, if they walked in this morning, I would probably avoid them. Or I'd kind of be like, oh, how come you're here? Or, I didn't expect to see someone like you in church. I know there's all sorts of weird things that go on in my own heart where there's either individual people or whole groups of people. And I'm kind of like, I know in my head that the gospel's for them. I know in my head that Jesus loves everyone, but I'm more surprised if they come. Or I'm more a bit actually offended if Jesus says, I want them as well as you. The religious people around Jesus had very, very clear ideas about who is in the in crowd and who isn't, who Jesus would accept. In fact, they thought they could tell Jesus who he should accept and who he shouldn't accept. They even thanked God, as we've seen a few weeks ago in Luke's Gospel in our series, they even thanked God that they're not like other people. Some of the religious people of Jesus' day prayed things like, thank you, God, that I am not like him. I'm not an adulterer. I'm not an unjust person. I'm not a tax collector. I'm not a parking attendant, whatever it might be for you. I think without always being fully aware of it, if we actually start to look inside ourselves, we can start to realize that maybe we've got set ideas about who God accepts and who he doesn't, and who belongs and fits in and is part of the in crowd and who isn't. Like for me, sometimes if I'm honest with you, I've thought that really in church life, only intelligent people can come. Don't know, do you ever think that? That actually those who can read their Bible in Hebrew and Greek, really, they're the serious Christians. They're the ones that Jesus really loves and has a special place for. Or maybe you think it's got to be people who can read, even if that's where you'd set the bar, because you've got to be able to read your Bible, right? So you've got to be able to read. Or it might be you think the complete opposite, and you think Christianity is just for really daft people who are too stupid to realise that science has disproved God. And so it's only for people who actually are a bit dim. Maybe you think it's just for the good-looking I was about to say something about if you look around, maybe, I don't know, I need to not go down that line, don't I? Look at this. This is the perfect couple, isn't it? They're going to go on to have 2.4 children. Their lives are going to be perfect. It's just going to all be wonderful for them. There's going to be no trouble. Maybe you look around in church and you think everyone else has got it all together. That's who Christianity is really for. Maybe you think it's for the strongest people. He looks like he's set on fire, doesn't he? I originally had a picture of a topless guy and was told that perhaps that's not appropriate for Sunday. But maybe you think, well, it's the strong, isn't it? Or maybe, again, you think it's the exact opposite. Maybe you think that the Christian faith is for the weak. Maybe you think it's for those who need a crutch to lean on because they can't cope with life without it. Maybe you think it's just for the rich. And depending on your life experience, where you set richness, where you set wealth will be different. For me, I remember when I first came to church, I thought that Christianity was... I didn't think it was for the working classes or those on low income or those who'd experienced poverty, because I looked around and assumed that everyone else had a fair bit of money. Everyone else went on holidays. I don't know how to explain the next slide. I don't know why I've put this one in, but maybe you think it's for Disney princesses is my next slide. I don't know. When I was going through the slides with Jacob this morning, I thought, I don't know who thinks that? Probably no one. Maybe if some of you have got like 4-year-olds, maybe they think it's just for the Disney princesses and princes. Maybe you think it's just for religious leaders, like these guys. Maybe it's just for those who have got, they must have it all together. Theologically, they must be sound and sorted, some of them anyway. Maybe it's just for the religious types. Or maybe, I don't know, I think I would lean more in the other direction. I would think it's more for the wayward, more for the troubled youth, more for those who maybe actually without Jesus, I can look at them and think there's probably no hope for them to get out of their life circumstances. I'd probably lean more towards, well, maybe it's for the homeless and the hungry. Actually, I'd love to see more people like this coming through the doors on a Sunday morning. Or maybe, definitely for me, if I see a picture like the next one, I think I'd love to think that the gospel is for the victim and not for the bully. Wouldn't you? I don't know. Depends who you are, depends on your life experience. Do you know what? I love that Jesus spent time with the vulnerable. I prefer that to the idea that he might spend all his time with people who are powerful and have never wanted for anything. I've got set ideas about who I think the gospel is for. It seems right to me that Jesus came for the vulnerable and the marginalised. That seems fair. But the thing about the mercy of God is that it isn't fair. And it isn't actually fair to any of us. The mercy of God's the great leveller, because none of us deserve it. Not a single one of us is qualified by our looks, our strength, our wealth, our intellect, any of those other things. They don't qualify us. God calls people to himself who he wants to call to himself. And he calls people to himself, and we might like it or we might not like it. He's not asking for our approval for who he wants in his family. He will call who he wants. And that's what we're going to explore this morning. So in our Bibles, Luke 18, verse 35. We've got a couple of stories here. Just to say, this is the last in our Luke series. And if you think, well, how come it's the last? If I look in my Bible, I've still got a few more chapters to go. It's actually because we looked at the death and resurrection of Jesus over Easter. So we jumped forward. Now we're jumping back, and then we're finishing up today. So we're finishing with this story of Jesus on the road to Jericho and these two guys that he meets. So in Luke 18, verse 35, it says this: as he drew near to Jericho, this is Jesus, as he drew near to Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. And hearing a crowd going by, he inquired what this meant. They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. And he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And those who were in front rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and commanded him to be brought to him. And when he came near, he asked him, what do you want me to do for you? He said, Lord, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, recover your sight. Your faith has made you well. And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise to God. He entered into Jericho and was passing through, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small in stature. I can relate to that. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. So Jesus is on his way to Jericho. He is passing through on his way to Jerusalem. He's passing through on his way to die. He knows what's ahead of him. He's going towards the cross. But on this walk, he meets these two men who are very different to each other in outward appearance. One of them has got nothing. One of them is rich. One of them is a nobody who's on the side of the road begging for loose change. The other one is a chief tax collector. He's not even just a tax collector. He's managed to rise through the ranks and he's done pretty well for himself. But what they have in common is that both of them want to see Jesus. How hungry are we to see Jesus this morning? Both of them wanted to see Jesus, but both of them were blocked by the crowds. Jesus knew on his route into Jericho that he was going to meet these two men. It wasn't an accident. It's not an accident. Sometimes, I don't know about you, I read a chapter of the Bible a day, which means that I would never read these two stories together because the chapter has been broken up. So I would read about the blind beggar and then I'd stop. And the next day, when I've probably forgotten what I read the day before, I'd come and read about Zacchaeus. The chapter numbers and the verse numbers were added to the Bible later. So actually, we're supposed to read this together. We're supposed to see these two stories together because these two men outwardly are very different, but the crowds didn't want them to come. The crowds blocked their way for different reasons. For the blind beggar, it was that he was considered unclean. He wouldn't even have been allowed to get near to the holy people of God. He would have been ostracized, vulnerable, marginalized, kept at arm's length, kept out the way, even kept out of the city. He would not have been allowed into the synagogue or the temple. He would have been unclean and therefore unworthy to come. And probably an assumption that religious people would have made about this man is that he must have sinned. He must have done something wrong because if he's blind, it must be his fault. That is how the thinking of the religious people of that day was. Even Jesus' disciples asked him once, how come blind people, is it their fault? Is it their parents' fault? Why is it happening? And Jesus said, no, it doesn't work like that. This guy would have depended on charity to even survive. He was a victim of circumstances and a victim of the harsh judgment, particularly of the religious people, but even of the general crowd that are following Jesus into Jericho and looking out for him. And basically the crowds tell him to shut up. When he cries out to Jesus, they rebuke him. They tell him to be silent. They're like, shush. Be quiet. Won't be bothered with a nobody like you. Don't disturb him. This isn't for you. You're not the right sort of person. Don't disturb this holy guy. In fact, many commentators agree that this blind guy is the same guy we read about in Mark's Gospel in chapter 10, where we're told his name is Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus means son of filth. This guy who was living in the dirt, literally, his name meant son of filth. And he cries out, Jesus, son of David. And son of David means Messiah, anointed one, holy one. Surely the holy one isn't going to mix with the dirty one. Surely the holy one, the anointed Messiah, is not going to be interested in this son of filth who's a nobody. No one's going to go near him. If Jesus touches him, Jesus becomes dirty. Surely he will keep away. Surely the son of David will not mix with the son of filth. But then there's these beautiful words. Jesus stopped. Jesus stopped. I was praying about this yesterday. I felt so overwhelmed again that Jesus stopped for me. Do you know that Jesus has stopped for you? He will stop for you. What incredible words. This guy, the crowds don't want him to come to Jesus, but Jesus stopped and commanded that he would be brought to him. He commanded them, the very crowds that were there for Jesus, the crowds that had told him to shut up. Jesus now says, no, escort him to me, will you? It's a wonderful just kind of flipping on its head that those who would say you can't come are actually told to bring in the very one they've said that to. And I wonder if part of the application of this for us this morning is if there's any we've thought, you can't come, you don't belong, or clean up your act, then you can come. Actually, I wonder if what Jesus would be saying to us this morning is go and get them. Go and get the very people you felt can't come in. And then there's this beautiful moment where Jesus says to him, what do you want me to do for you? And of course, we might read that and think, well, come on, Jesus, it's obvious, isn't it? The guy's blind. Of course he wants to be healed. But if we think about it, this guy didn't really have any choices in his life. He didn't really have control over his circumstances. He wouldn't have had any options, really, other than to live the life that he was living. And so in asking him this question, Jesus is actually immediately giving this guy dignity. He's immediately giving him agency. He's giving him power. He's not assuming that he knows what he wants, even though Jesus knew all things and he would have known what he wanted. He's not making that assumption. For this blind guy to get healed would have had dramatic implications for his life. He actually would have lost his community because although he was ostracized from the crowds and the in people, he would have had his own community of fellow beggars. In fact, the other Gospels tell us he wasn't alone on the road begging. There were other beggars there too. And immediately he gets healed. Well, he can't go back and hang out with the other blind beggars because they're not going to want anything to do with him anymore. But also, he probably has no way to make a living. If he's been begging on the streets, it's not like he's just going to go walk straight into a job. His whole life is going to change if he gets healing. But beyond that, I think we often think we know what people need or want, don't we? Have you ever thought that? You ever had someone and you think, oh, I know what they need is this. Jubilee Plus, the charity that I work for the last couple of years, we've run something called Jubilee Plus Voices, where we've travelled around the country asking people in poverty to tell us honestly about their experiences of church, their experiences of food banks and baby basics and all those sorts of things that we run. And we've wanted their honest opinions about how we found it and what would most help them. And I remember in one of these where I was sat there and we asked them, would you prefer to just be given money? Because we think, actually, if you're given money, you have choice, don't you? So we might think most people do just want money. And actually, what was really fascinating was everyone said no. And when we asked, what would you rather have? They said things like, one said, I'd rather have someone do a food shop for me for a few weeks just to help me get back on my feet again. Another one said, I'd rather have someone just take care of one bill for me for a season of time just to take the pressure off. A couple of people said, I'd rather just have friendship. I'd rather just have people who want to spend time with me and will hang out with me and will walk the journey with me. Do you know, as a single woman, I've had people come up to me and say, I'm praying for a husband for you. One person even said, even if you don't want one. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? There's an assumption you must want one, right? Maybe this blind beggar found it too painful to ask for healing again. Do you know that? We've probably all got friends, haven't we? Even in church here, maybe this is you and you think, I've been prayed for healing so many times that actually what I really want is if I got to see Jesus face to face like this blind beggar, I might just want to ask him why. Jesus doesn't assume he wants healing because he might have wanted money. He might have wanted food, or he might have just wanted to say, can you tell me, why is God allowing this suffering that I'm going through right now? Jesus offers him agency. He offers him dignity. Jesus actually serves him. He's kind of saying, how can I serve you? What can I do for you? What would you like me to do for you? Isn't that an astonishing question that the Saviour of the world deigns to ask? What can I do for you? And maybe he's here with you this morning and wanting to ask you the same question. What can I do for you this morning? And what happens is he says, can I be healed? And Jesus says yes, and he heals him. And it says that he then followed Jesus, glorifying him. And actually these same crowds who told him to shut up a few minutes ago are now celebrating his testimony. And we can have a tendency to do that, can't we? The people we think, well, this isn't really for them, but if they've got a great testimony, we love it. But then maybe when they slip back into old ways of behaviour, we question again, oh, is the gospel really for them? But this guy, he follows Jesus, he worships Jesus, and he leads others. The crowd that blocked him out, he's now leading them in praising God. And they carry on their way, and Jesus is about to stop for another guy. And actually, so the blind beggar, I think we can reasonably assume, was still part of the crowd at this point, because it says he followed Jesus. And so as they walk on, this blind beggar's still there. And now the blind beggar's probably like, well, the gospel's for people like me. The good news of Jesus, it's for people like me. And then they're about to encounter this other guy who outwardly looks completely different. He's rich, he's powerful, he's risen to this high position. He's the chief tax collector. I wonder, Jacob, if you could put up, oh, I'm looking there, Jacob doesn't even look like he's there. Oh, he is there, I can see his hand just appeared, this picture. This fat cat sitting on others, this is like Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus made his wealth by exploiting his own people. Zacchaeus took money from his fellow Jews and he gave it to their enemies, the Romans, but he also made sure he added on enough to make himself rich. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm all right with Jesus stopping for blind Bartimaeus, but I'm not so keen on Jesus stopping for this guy. I want to say, like the Pharisees, don't you know what he's done? I find that kind of Pharisaical heart at work in me. The crowds block him from seeing Jesus too. Imagine a rich, powerful, imagine King Charles walking in. Imagine if King Charles walked in those doors over there and he wanted to come to the front. Imagine us all blocking him. It just wouldn't really happen, would it? I don't know whether maybe Prince William. I guess it depends who you like most. I was going to say Harry Kane. I did have to Google who's the England captain, and I actually don't even know if that's still current. But I thought one for the football fans. Or, I don't know, the most popular man in Britain is apparently Sir David Attenborough. Now, if he walked in, I'd get out of the way, wouldn't you? Well, yeah, he needs to be saved. That's true. Tom Cruise, maybe, I don't know. Maybe the Pope or a great apostle like Jeremy Simpkins. If they turned up here and they wanted to get to the front to see what was happening, it's almost unthinkable that we would collectively, in a moment, block their view, isn't it? We would part ways, wouldn't we? We would get out of the way. Maybe some of us might not, but the majority of us probably would. But Zacchaeus is so despised by this crowd that no one is making way for him. No one is getting out of the way. He had the wealth and the status and the power that you would have expected the crowds to move so that he could get to the front. But they didn't. He had exploited these people. Probably if he was going to hang out in a crowd like this, he'd need to watch his back. You know, in a crowd, it's easy to take someone out, and before, the crowd would have to disperse and they'd be like, oh, what happened to Zacchaeus? He would have had to watch his back. He had profited from these people. He had exploited them. But I wonder if Zacchaeus had heard about this Jesus who had a tax collector even in his 12 closest friends. Maybe Zacchaeus had heard about that. Maybe Zacchaeus had heard, well, there was this guy, John the Baptist, and we're told that he baptized even tax collectors. Jesus, we're told in Luke 5, had eaten with a large company of tax collectors. And actually in Luke 7, Jesus is accused as an insult of being a friend of tax collectors. Maybe Zacchaeus had heard these rumors about this Jesus, this holy man, this Messiah, who wasn't ashamed even to mix with a guy like him. But for whatever the reason, Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to see him, and he couldn't do it with the crowds in the way. So he ran ahead of them, something that in Middle Eastern culture for a man of stature and status was not something that he would have done. And then he did something even worse than that. He climbed a tree. I tried to get Hannah to come and find a sycamore tree to me to see if I could climb up it and physically demonstrate this. But the only one I found had branches so high, I was like, I can't even put my hand up to reach them. But Zacchaeus managed to climb up a sycamore tree, and he climbed up, and the crowds were in his way. But up in the tree, he wanted to get this glimpse of Jesus. And then what we find again is that Jesus stops again. I wonder what the blind guy thought of this, the blind beggar, when he sees Jesus. What, you're going to stop for him too? Maybe he was so overwhelmed by the mercy of Jesus that he was delighted to see Jesus stop for this one. Or maybe he was offended. We can fall either way, can't we? But anyway, Jesus stopped and he looked up and he said his name, just like Hillary brought in a time of worshipping Jesus, singing to Jesus. I must stay at your house today. I must. That word must in the Greek, it's the same word that's elsewhere in the Gospels translated necessary. It's necessary that I come to your house today. And this is outrageous. We need to not miss how outrageous this is, that Jesus would stop for this guy. Don't you understand, Jesus, that he has exploited us? That he has taken advantage of us, that he's got wealthy off our backs. The crowds complain, and if I'm honest with you, I'd complain too if I was among them. But Jesus meets Zacchaeus with compassion and with acceptance, and Jesus had offered to serve the blind beggar, but now he says to Zacchaeus, I want you to serve me. I want to come and stay at your house. And this would have been a great honor for Zacchaeus. And I'm sure that among the crowds, there were more worthy people. Surely the crowds would have been like, but no, this guy, he's lived a holy life, Jesus. This guy, or he's a religious leader. Why don't you come to his house? But Jesus has chosen to go to the house of possibly the most offensive person in the crowds. And do you know what? Jesus wasn't afraid to talk about people's sin. Elsewhere, we see Jesus call people hypocrites. We see him call people whitewashed tombs. You look good on the outside, but inside you're just dead and corrupt. We've just seen earlier in Luke chapter 18 that Jesus has said to a rich young ruler, sell all your possessions and give them to the poor. And yet here, so we might expect the same thing. Why doesn't Jesus say, hey, Zacchaeus, come down, repent of your hypocrisy and your exploitation, and sell all your possessions and give to the poor. And then when you've done that, you can come. But he doesn't say that to Zacchaeus. He doesn't say that to Zacchaeus. What we read in the text, it seems that Jesus starts simply with fellowship, with eating together, with friendship. You know, Jesus accepts both these men on the road to Jericho. One of them is oppressed. One of them is an oppressor. One of them has been exploited and vulnerable, and the other one is an exploiter of the vulnerable. But interestingly, for both of them, the acceptance and mercy of Jesus leads to radical transformation. It leads to complete change. The blind beggar can't go back. He now follows Jesus, glorifying God. He can't go back again to his old life. And Zacchaeus has this radical response. He says, half my goods I'll give to the poor. Now, Zacchaeus would have known the Old Testament law, and in the Old Testament law, you had to tithe to the poor and to the priests. Tithing's 10%. He says, I'll give 50%. And then he says, if I've defrauded anyone, I will restore. If I've defrauded anyone, I mean, he definitely defrauded people, I'll give fourfold back. Well, according to Old Testament law, in Numbers 5, verse 7, if you wrong someone, you have to make full restitution plus 20%, plus a fifth. And so Zacchaeus says, I'm not going to do 120%, I'm going to do 400%. A normal response to the mercy of God and to the compassion and acceptance of Jesus is radical transformation. Radical turning away from our old lives to the things that God would have us do. It's not a how little, where's the line, where's the bar, and how little can I get away with? It's Jesus, it's all about you, and it's all for you. And you can have anything you want because you are worthy of it all. Your mercy has so astonished me that I don't want to hold a single thing back from you, Jesus. The crowds were judgmental, but Jesus was merciful, and it's beautiful. Any ideas we have in our head about God as demanding or harsh are wrong. He doesn't transform us by condemning us. He transforms us and accepting us and welcoming us in. But he does change us. It's come as you are. But when you really see Jesus clearly, it's you will change. You will be transformed, because that's the natural and inevitable consequence of grasping the love and acceptance of Jesus. It means we want to follow him. We want to worship him. We want to obey him. We even want to sacrifice for him. Jesus commanded both the blind beggar and Zacchaeus to come closer. He told the crowd, bring the blind beggar, and he said to Zacchaeus, hurry down. I wonder if Jesus is saying to us this morning, whether you're here and you think, I don't know Jesus at all, or whether you're here and you think, I've known Jesus for decades. I wonder if his invitation to us, well, do you know what? I don't wonder if, I know it is. His command to us this morning is come closer. Come closer again. Whatever you've done, whoever else might think you can come or not, doesn't matter. Jesus says come. If the crowds get in your way, yell louder, climb a tree, do whatever you need to do to get to see Jesus, because Jesus said, actually, we think we're trying to see him, but he's the one who came to seek and to save the lost. That's how Jesus finishes in this. That's that last, if you can put up the last verse, Jacob. Jesus says, the Son of Man, that's him, the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. Jesus was seeking both these guys. He wanted to welcome them in. But it's costly. The mercy of Jesus is free and costs everything. It cost him everything to do it. And it's costly to us as we come. And the question for us as we come closer this morning is, are we willing to give up our time? Are we willing to give up our money? Are we willing to give up any bitterness? Maybe it's our love of gossip or dodgy TV programs or tearing down others, whatever it is that we are attached to. Are we prepared to look at Jesus again and have him look at us again? And for us to go, Jesus, I'll give that up for you. And are we, church, those of you who would say this is your church family, are we willing to welcome in anyone who would come? I believe that we are. But I think it's an opportunity to revisit what goes on in our hearts. Is anyone welcome? Is the person who most irritates you in your small group welcome? Is the person who's most hurt you welcome? Is the person who's treated those you love badly welcome? I don't know who you are in this story. Maybe you're the victim. Maybe you're the perpetrator. Maybe you're the bully. Maybe you're part of the in crowd, maybe you're not. This morning we have an opportunity to come close to Jesus again, to thank him for the mercy we've been shown. I wonder if the band could come back up. And I wonder if we might stand. In a minute, Anita or Dan will give us an opportunity for how we're going to respond. But just as the band get ready, why don't you just, if you're comfortable, to lift your hands to God or put your hand on your heart or whatever is your kind of posture of saying, God, have your way in me. Why don't you just ask God, who am I in this story? And what are you saying to me this morning? Am I someone in the crowd who needs to get out the way for others? Do I need to adjust my attitudes? Or am I like Zacchaeus where I know I don't deserve. I know I'm what someone others would say has treated people badly. But Jesus, could you have mercy even on me? And will I give up things I've clung to for you? Or maybe you're the victim and life's just treated you badly all along. Just ask him this morning, Jesus, have mercy on me, knowing that his answer is yes, I will. Take a moment to pray.